So, as part of the big city tutorial, you can see that the road and street network in this city is probably going to be something that is rather congested. One of the best ways to alleviate congestion in your city is through the use of rail and mass transit. So, this tutorial is going to discuss the options that are available to you as a mayor for building these options. When it comes to maintenance, rail is cheaper than roads, and it is significantly more efficient at getting hordes of people from one place to another. Industrial areas also tend to thrive when there is access to railways for transporting freight out of town. This comes with the added benefit of keeping pesky polluting freight trucks off the roads. When it comes to building railways that get used, placement is everything. Be wise and do not squander your iron. So here's your rail button. Rail lines can be used both for commuter traffic and freight trips. For your Sims to use these tracks, they need access. So don't forget to build passenger and freight train stations if you want your network utilized. Build your station near origination and destination points for both commuters and freight users. Sims hate to travel far to use mass transit. Hint, your route query tool may help you decide where the placement of these rail stations is best. The passenger train stations are for your commuting Sims. Make sure to place stations in the center of your residential areas and in central locations of your commercial districts. Otherwise, they won't get much use. For industry to be successful, manufactured goods need to have a way to get out of town. If you rely on roads to satisfy this demand, freight trucks compete with commuters for lane space, causing congestion and put out huge amounts of pollution. Nobody wins. So try this. Place a freight train station in the center of your industrial district and run rail lines from the station to the edge of the map. As with passenger rail stations, manufacturers will not use your rail network unless there's a freight train station for access. You just might encourage to use your industries to use rail as their main means of transport, which then frees up the roads for you and your Sims. This is the Grand Rail Station. If you have really invested in building up your rail system, you might want to cap it off with a Grand Station. These stations have several times the passenger capacity of small passenger rail stations, and on top of that, they increase desirability for commercial office development. Monorail and monorail stations can add some panache to your town. Monorail takes up as much space as surface rail, but doesn't interfere with traffic because it passes right over the top of the roads. This stylish transportation option is costly to install and maintain, but provides super high-speed travel. Roads and rail won't necessarily be the only answer to your transportation needs. All large cities need to utilize mass transit options in one form or another. You can build bus stops to get your Sims out of their cars and into the mode of mass transit, and add value to your roads and avenues. Be sure to strategically place your stations in the heart of your residential neighborhoods and your work districts, aka commercial and industrial zones, to make your Sims feel the walk to the stop is worth their while. This is also a good place to use the route query tool. These stations don't come with parking, so your Sims will have to walk with them unless you place a public parking garage nearby. Sims willingly walk only so far, and you need to be sure to place the stations within walking distance, usually about 10 tiles depending on how lengthy the commute. The route query tool will show you the major commute routes in your city. Click on the different roads with that tool to locate clusters of Sims that live near each other and also work in close proximity. These locations are where you want your mass transit stations. Elevated rail is actually an above-ground extension of a subway network. Think of your elevated rail subway system as a single rapid transit system. Rapid transit runs trains much more frequently and is much more efficient at moving lots of Sims quickly over short distances than surface rail systems. This makes it a good choice for mass transit in and around your city. Elevated rail is cheaper to build and maintain than subways, but more expensive than surface rail. Like monorail, elevated rail takes up the space of surface rail, but allows road traffic to pass uninterrupted below. Keep in mind, if you invest in an elevated rail subway system, you want to be sure that it is used to its fullest capacity. Sims walk to elevated and subway stations, but putting a bus stop next door will encourage more distant Sims to use the system. If you build a public parking garage next door to the station in a residential area, you might entice a lot of Sims to begin park and ride. Subway and elevated rail run the same trains and schedules, but when building your system, you may find locations where it is best for your subway station to emerge from the depths, or your elevated train to go underground. Perhaps the terrain is too steep for elevated rail, and it's better to go below. This is where the subway elevated rail transition comes in. Build one of these babies to smoothly link your subway line to your elevated line. If you get really skillful with this kind of stuff, you may be well on your way to earning an award from your Sims. Subways provide a great way for people to get to and from work, and since they are built below the Earth's surface, they take almost no space away from development. Again, the placement of subway stations are critical. Subways are pricey, but if you are building a rival to Tokyo or Mexico City, you'll probably need to go below for the best parking flow. Mass transit is a great alternative to driving, cutting down on traffic and pollution in your city. If you want your Sims to take greatest advantage of your beautiful mass transit system, you need to take into account that Sims just don't like to walk that far. Public parking garages to the rescue. Build a public parking garage next to a suburban mass transit station and serve a much larger area, and many more Sims, by letting them park and ride. Got lots of traffic and not much money? Turn that congestion into cash by strategically building a few toll booths. Every trip that passes through a toll booth puts money in your budget. Select the toll booth to build your little money maker on any road, street, avenue, or highway. Every silver lining has its cloud, though. Toll booths do nothing to help solve your traffic problem. In fact, they might make things worse. Being told they now also have to pay to travel on routes they previously used for free gets your commuting Sims a little resentful. If you plan to have your commercial development go through the roof, then you need access to the skies. Without an airport serving your city, you won't see huge commercial districts develop. Make sure your airport has good transportation access to your commercial zones, otherwise those white-collar Sims won't be able to make their flights. Take into consideration, though, that airports are large, noisy, and generate a lot of traffic and air pollution. Neighboring residential Sims might not be too happy with planes zooming low over their rooftops. 3 different airport types are provided for you to choose from: landing strip, municipal airport, and international airport. Each may need to be expanded as your air traffic increases. Keep in touch with your transportation advisor. He requests the necessary expansions when the time comes. If you have built a city on a large ocean or waterway, water transportation can serve the same purpose for commuter and freight transport as overland forms of travel do for landlocked communities. Building a bridge that spans a body of water can get very expensive. Constructing a ferry system can often get you by until your city coffers can afford more expensive alternatives. Place a ferry terminal on both sides of the water and connect them to a road system so that people can drive to and from the ferry. There are 2 types of ferries, one for pedestrian passengers only, and one for passengers and automobiles. Ferries of one type do not dock at a terminal for the other type, so be sure to set up your ferry system with this in mind. Build at least 2 ferry terminals of the same type on the same body of water, or else no one takes the ferry. Ferry trips can take your citizens to adjacent cities that are built on the same body of water, making for very pleasurable commutes. Build bus stops and parking garages next to passenger ferry terminals to encourage more use. If you're a mayor who wants to encourage mega industry, hopefully you've already built connections to your neighboring communities. Another way to help get your industrial goods out of town is to provide a seaport or 2. This will not work if your city is situated in Nebraska. Just make sure that you build seaports near industrial zones and provide good roads leading to them so freight trucks can get there lickety-split. Marinas are not really about getting around, but more for your Sims recreation. Building a marina improves local residential desirability and provides you with new drivable watercraft. Have fun and don't forget your life vest.